This is BBC World News. I'm Regid Ahmed. Our top stories. A global cyber attack on computer networks, including Britain's National Health Service.
They're using old computers, old systems, and if they don't keep them properly patched, they will keep on getting hit by attacks like this.
President Trump warns the sacked FBI chief James Comey against leaking, but the White House plays down the row.
I don't think that's not a threat. He's simply stated a fact. The tweet speaks for itself. I'm moving on.
And Chelsea are champions. Celebrations as the club win the English Premier League football title. Hello and welcome to BBC News. Cyber attacks have been reported on organisations around the world, including in Britain, Spain, Russia, the United States and China. In the UK, the public health system has been affected, with doctors blocked from patient files. The attack involved ransomware, a kind of malware that encrypts data and locks out the user. Rory Catlin-Jones reports.
It looked at first. Rory Catlin-Jones, BBC News.
Well, I spoke with our technology correspondent Dave Lee a short time ago and asked him if he knew who was behind these cyber attacks.
No, we don't, to be quite frank with you. These kind of attacks, they're bounced from various proxies around the world, meaning it's very hard to trace it back to who's originally sent them. And of course, as Rory mentioned in his report, the way they're asking for this ransom money to be paid is via Bitcoin, which is an online currency essentially that's very, very hard to track, which is why criminals running these kind of schemes would do that. So no, very difficult to know where this has originated, but the spread of where it's gone is becoming quite clear. Thousands of companies and individuals all over the world.
Dave, thousands of companies and people all over the world. How is it possible to hit so many countries, so many computers all at once?
Well, here's the thing, that they used a vulnerability that was exposed a month ago by a hacking group that said they found it within the files belonging to the NSA, the US National Security Agency. They were leaked onto the internet, so it's possible these criminals were able to see that tool, repurpose it for this attack. Now, as we heard again from Rory there, Microsoft did send out an update to solve this issue. They sent out a patch that would fix the vulnerability that caused this to happen, but not enough people have gone to the effort of upgrading their systems quickly enough to prevent this happening today. So there's going to be lots of fingers being pointed at the organisations that didn't do that. Also fingers being pointed at the NSA. When they create a tool like this, should they warn Microsoft ahead of time, or do they allow this kind of risk to exist, that if it ever got out into the public, such damage can be caused?
That's an interesting point, that the NSA is accused of creating a vulnerability. But how are companies and people going to rectify this situation and get their computers back?
Well, in the near term, often what we've seen in these cases, and there's been a few hospitals in the US that have been hit by this kind of attack in the past, and quite often, I'm sad to say, they've actually had to pay the ransom. They've paid the fee. There was a hospital in Los Angeles that paid over $15,000 to get its data unencrypted so they could use it again. I guess the tussle you have is that the more these ransomware attacks are effective, i.e. the more that these criminals make money, the more they could perhaps keep happening. So there's a decision to be made between getting that data back quickly, but also trying to prevent this kind of attack being quite so popular in the future.
BBC's Dave Lee in San Francisco. President Trump has warned the former FBI Director James Comey not to leak to the press, turning up the political temperature even higher in Washington. Among a deluge of tweets, Mr. Trump said James Comey had better hope there are no tapes of our conversations before he starts leaking to the press. It follows a TV interview in which Mr. Trump said he alone had taken the decision to fire his FBI chief, contradicting previous claims about the sequence of events. The president's letter to Mr. Comey on Tuesday said he was being terminated on the recommendation of the Attorney General and his deputy. Well, that set off even more speculation about recording devices, and today the White House spokesman was pressed on the issue. Sean Spicer there not being drawn at all. Well, let's speak to Laura Bicker in Washington. Laura, there are some sources suggesting that Comey isn't concerned about Donald Trump's tweet. At the end of an extraordinary week, another one in US politics, where does it stand in terms of what we know between what happened with Trump and Comey?
Well, the problem is we've only really heard President Trump's version of what happened. Now, this is all referring to a dinner that took place in January where the president claims that James Comey said that the president wasn't under investigation for his links to Russia. Now, during that conversation as well, President Trump has reportedly, according to various press reports, reportedly asked for James Comey's pledge of personal loyalty. Now, we understand from a Fox interview that the transcripts we have, the Fox interview will go out tomorrow, Mr. Trump has denied it. But when it comes to that thinly veiled threat, although Sean Spicer has denied that it's a threat, that perhaps if James Comey goes to the press, secret recordings might be released, well, it's not known if any such tapes exist. You heard there from Sean Spicer, it certainly wasn't a denial. And Mr. Trump was also asked about that during the Fox interview. And he said he didn't want to talk about it. He just wanted to keep Mr. Comey honest. The problem with all of this is that you have one version coming from the White House one day and completely another from the president the next day. And it makes it look like the White House either isn't communicating or perhaps they are just not on the same page, can't give out the same message. So it's very difficult to know where the truth lies. In total, whatever happened that night, James Comey was invited to give testimony to the Senate Intelligence Committee next week. We understand now that he will not attend. Whatever happened between those two over that dinner, James Comey is staying silent for now.
That's very interesting because a lot of analysts have said he would attend, that they believe there was no reason why he wouldn't. Why do you think he's made this decision now?
He's a private citizen, so it's up to him whether or not he attends these meetings. And after all, he is the former director of the FBI. He has been accused of being a showboat and a grandstander, and perhaps he doesn't want to fulfill that title. It's unknown why James Comey will not attend that Intelligence Committee briefing. Perhaps he thinks it's not the right time. Perhaps if he feels that if they want information from the FBI, they can get that from the acting director. Perhaps he doesn't want to make any more headlines. Perhaps he feels Mr. Trump is doing the job for him in many respects. Whatever is happening, he's decided that this is not the time to talk.
Laura Bicker, I guess we'll have to wait and see whether we hear more at some point. Well, let's take a look at some of the other stories making the news. Italy's highest court has upheld the 16-year jail sentence imposed on the captain of the shipwrecked cruise liner, the Costa Concordia. 32 people died when the vessel hit the rocks off the island of Giglio in January 2012. Captain Francesco Schettino was also convicted of abandoning ship before passengers and crew were clear. Candidates in Iran's presidential election exchanged barbs in their final debate on Friday, accusing each other of corruption and economic mismanagement. The current president, Hassan Rouhani, is contesting the election to be held next week, along with 5 other candidates. European officials are discussing with the US whether to broaden the ban on laptops on board planes. The US brought in restrictions in March forbidding passengers from carrying laptops in their hand luggage if they were travelling to the US from certain countries. The UK announced a similar ban soon after. US officials have already warned that the ban was likely to be extended. Pope Francis has been greeting pilgrims at the Fatima Shrine Complex in Portugal, where he's due to make 2 new saints on Saturday. Portugal has temporarily reimposed border controls to keep track of the hundreds of thousands of people coming in from elsewhere in the European Union. The shrine commemorates 3 child shepherds who are said to have had repeated visions of the Virgin Mary in 1917. Soldiers in Ivory Coast have opened fire in at least 5 military bases across the country. They're shooting in the air in protest of a deal made with the government to scrap plans to give them back pay and bonuses. It follows a televised apology by a spokesman for the soldiers over previous demonstrations. The BBC's Tamazin Ford has been following the story from Abidjan, the economic capital.